Aloha guys, welcome to Healthy Ukulele. We are going over week 5 of how I look at the fretboard. I've got it labeled on the videos as the CAGFD method, the cops always get free donuts method, but it's really like 4 or 5 of these different ways of looking at it tied together, because what it really is my approach to the fretboard. And any combination or all of these things will work together to help you kind of get your own way of looking at the fretboard. And that's ultimately what the goal is for us to be able to look at what we're doing and make sense of it, right? Because that's the whole thing. If we don't know how to make sense of what we're looking at, then it's all to moot. So that being said, we're going to kind of review what we've gone over so far, and then we'll break it down to what we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so the first thing we did was we looked at the cops always get free donuts thing, right? And you guys remember that. So it was the CAGFD pictures, right? We have it in major, minor, and diminished, right? And then the following week we learned that dominant one, which ties in with the diminished. And we can start to see how the dominant chord is related to our diminished chord. So our 7 and our 5 are tightly knit together. And so we learned that first method. Okay, and then we started looking at scales, right? And we started trying to figure out, like, what makes a scale? How do we figure out the scale? And then we came to this, right, with the whole half method, where we took our musical alphabet, start anywhere, and if you go with the whole step to the next whole step to the half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and another half step, you get a major scale, right? So at any point you start, you follow that series of intervals, and you will end up with a major scale. Now from there, we built the chords in our key, and we began to kind of check and see how these chords tie back to that key, and why some keys, when you're playing a song, you'll have a chord that's not in that key, but it's a direct substitution for one of the notes that are actually in the key. And we kind of touched on that a little bit. And then we looked at a totally different approach, right? We looked at the Adamski method, which was taking a phone number, the harmonic phone number, 7362514, and looking at your fretboard like so, right? So if I got that first one, 1, that was a major chord, 2 is a minor chord, 3 is a minor chord, 4 is a major chord, 5 is a major chord, 6 is a minor, 7 chord is diminished, and then we go back to the 1, and taking that idea, right, with 7362514, that just means whatever number comes after is the number that's under it because of the tuning of the ukulele, right? We're tuned to a 4th, a 3rd, and a 4th. I've got a low G, so this is a 4th. If you have a high G, then if you're going from the low note to the high note, it's a 5th, but a 5th is an inverted 4th anyway. Okay, so that being said, looking at that Adamski method, if this was number 1, underneath it was 4. If this is number 2, underneath it is 5. 3, 6. The crooked was 4, 7, right? So it would look like that. And 5, 1, 6, 2, 7, 3. Okay? Now on these two strings, it's because of the tuning, because this is tuned to a 3rd, it would look like this, right? 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, 4, 7 looks like this. 5, 1, 6, 2, 7, 3. And when we go back to the bottom, it's back to a 4th again, right? So it would be the same as the top 2 strings. Now, with the Adamski method, what Todd's approach to this was he would say, whatever the 1 is, right? So an example, if we're playing in the key of G, that G, the open G would be 1. So going by that, 1, 4, 2, 5, 3 6, 4 7, 5 1, 6 2, 7 3, and we're back to 1 4, 12 frets away. But Todd always approached it like this, right? Because it's 1 4 2 5 3 6. He would say 1 2 3 crooked, right? 4 7, and then 5 1 6 2 7 3. So that's 1 2 3 again. So we got 1 2 3 crooked, 1 2 3, and because these four notes are clustered together, he would call this a cluster, right? So they say 1 2 3 crooked, 1 2 3 cluster, right? And that was his idea, to break it into 3 notes per string. So picture 1 look like this, right? So there's 2 whole steps, whole step, and then the one underneath is the same thing. And when we go to picture 2, we would start on number 2, and it would be a whole step, half step over a whole step, because 3 had that crooked in it, right? It'd be half step, then whole step, half step. Picture 4, whole step over half step, 5 was the same thing as 1, 6, whole step, half step over whole step, half step, and 7, half step, whole step, and then we're back to 1, right? And so he created these 7 pictures, and the way he had it lined up was the picture underneath that picture was the previous number, meaning if this is 1, right, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6, so the next note would be 7, right? And as we know, this was 4, so 7 would have been here, but because it's on this string set, it moves up 1, so 7 would be here. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, then I play picture 7, and there's my whole scale. That's over that picture, and it connects to that picture, right? So the G and F pictures. Now, the Adamski method ties in to the Cops Always Get Free Donuts method, right? And we kind of get the idea of this. So today we're going to take a new approach. We're going to be not veering off of this, but adding to what we already know with the Adamski method and the Cops Always Get Free Donuts method. That being said, before we start, we want to make sure that we're all tuned up. If you guys have one of these things, this is great, right? Like it doesn't matter what the brand is, if it's Snark, if it's Oahu, or any of these tuners. I have a Peterson tuner. The only reason I bought this thing in the first place was because at the time, and keep in mind, this thing is like, I want to say 15 years old, okay? At the time, these things came in this little box, right? And they were $80. And I used to work for a music store. And so, because we got a whole big shipment of them, the owner of the music store gave us cost on it. So all the workers got the tuner for cost, and at cost, I believe it was like $40. So, which is still an expensive tuner, but I was like, man, they're gonna last forever. Okay, so I bought 2 of them. So that's why I have that tuner. But here's the funny thing: you buy that $5 tuner that comes, or that comes in the package with your first ukulele, it does the same thing as that one. So it makes this G, right? If you don't have a tuner, you can tune to me now, G. Or if you have a high G. Okay, C, E, and A. G, C, E, A. So I always tell my kindergarten students that goats can eat anything. Okay, picture a goat eating an aluminum can, because they do that for some reason, and you'll get that stuck in your head. Goats can eat anything. Now, okay, back to what we were talking about before. Our fretboard approach, right? We had the first thing, right, was our Cops Always Get Free Donuts. And when we looked at it, we saw that we have our C shape, right, which looks like this. If I can get my highlighter to work. Right, so it's these notes, right? That ties to the A shape, right? That ties to the G shape. Oh, what am I doing here? Should be this. Oh, why is this doing this? Technology is a wonderful thing when it works, but when it doesn't, it's a real pain in the butt. So, there we go. Okay, so there's our G shape. Okay. Our F shape is that. And we also have the optional fifth too, right? And last but not least, our D shape. And so it goes in that order, right? So you see the C shape ties to the A shape, right? There's the A shape again, ties to the G shape, which is part of the F shape, and that ties to the D shape. And if we can kind of get that idea in our head, then everything else with this method starts to make sense. Okay? Now, if you look at the last column there, I have a C scale. And we know that this is a C scale because the 1 is on the C note, right? And so this follows the Adamski method, right? Where we said 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, 4, 7 is crooked, 5, 1, 6, 2, so forth. Okay, now this would be picture 1. Whole step over whole step, whole step. Picture 2. Whole step, half step over whole step, whole step. Picture 3. Half step, whole step over whole step, half step. Picture 4. Whole step over half step, whole step. Oh, keeps making it bigger. Stop doing that. Going to picture 5. Looks like picture 1, right? Whole step over whole step, whole step. Then we get into the whole half over whole half for 6, and half whole over half whole for 7. And then we're back to where we started. Okay? And keeping in mind, if we go numerically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4, 7 is the crooked, and we'd start picture 7. Right? And that gives us the tie between the G shape and the F shape. Okay, now we're going to look at the first chart that we have here. Okay? And I call this the Tetris method. Okay? And how many of you guys have played Tetris before? Right? You see those shapes coming down, and it's a fun puzzle game, and we try to stick them together. The reason I call this the Tetris idea is because I'm looking at it as those shapes. When I used to play Tetris, I used to wait for the straight line, right? Because if that thing dropped and you got it right in that right spot, you get 4. You knock out 4 columns. And so that was the most points you could score and they called that a Tetris, right? So the shapes in here kind of remind me of Tetris, okay? And they always go by the same order. So if we look back on our picture in the first column, right, we see all the dots that pertain to the numbers in the fourth column, okay? The other two in the middle are just kind of, you notice there's all the dots there, and that's because I'm just showing those shapes. We're going to get into later how to make majors minor and whatnot. And when I do that, we're going to be using that chart. But because we're using this right now, we're going to be using the first column and the fourth column. Okay, so looking at that first column, if I look at everything as the line, right? Let me change my color here. So we'll go with this blue and see if that helps. Okay, so from here to here, there's my straight line, right? Then I've got this thing, and this reminds me of, I don't know if you guys were around in the time, but there used to be the Chevy commercials, the heartbeat of America. Remember that? And so the reflection on the glass was like this kind of thing, you know, and it looked like the heartbeat monitor, so they called it the heartbeat of America. And it became like a big thing in the 80s to make the draw that symbol on everything, and when you're doing graffiti and whatnot. But anyhow, I think of this as the up stroke of that heartbeat. So heartbeat alive, right? And then we have our Tetris crooked picture, right? And we're back to our straight line. So we did the straight line twice. We got our crooked picture again. Now we've got the opposite. So the heartbeat dead, right? When you're going down, that's like the heartbeat, the heart rate dropped, right? Then I've got my straight line again, heartbeat. And this is, once we're here, okay, that's that. We're repeating. Okay, we're back to the beginning. So if you think about it, all we have to do is see our pictures in these things. And so like the Adamski method where we took 3 notes per string, I take 3 notes or 3 shapes and I put them back to back. Right? Now, there is an exception. The G shape, which I call the seat belt, it's the belt buckle of the seat belt. And that's the one where it takes 4 of these pictures and puts them together. So my first picture in my C shape is going to be straight line, heartbeat alive, and the crooked. Right? And then if I play through those, I do have one repeating note here. Right? So this note is this note. So you would pick which one you wanted to play. I usually pick the open shape when available, or the furthest towards the nut. Okay, so that being said, of those 3, if I look at it, my root is on the 3rd string open, or it's also on the 1st string 3rd fret, and that's the root for the C shape, right? So we said straight, and then we got our heartbeat alive, and then our crooked. So those notes, right? And then we got this one here. But this note is repeating, right? Same note. So instead of playing that twice, I'll just play it. I'll keep in mind that that note is that note open, right? And that's my open shape for my C, right? Okay, now, you guys remember what's next? Cops? Always, right? So the A shape would be next. And our A shape starts where our C shape ended. Right? It'd be there. But the actual notes for the A shape begin in the heartbeat picture, right? So I have my heartbeat, my crooked, then it goes back to a straight, and if I put those 3 together, I have this shape. Same note, so I'll move it here, and there's my picture. Okay. Now that gets us to the A shape. Okay. Now, if I went to the next one, remember I said this is the belt buckle? Well, here's why. If you notice, when we go through these shapes, what I want you guys to see is this. Okay, so we said this and this is the same thing, right? That's the octave. Now let's move our way in. We have the heartbeat alive, the heartbeat dead, which is the same shape, just flipped. What is that? I guess 180 degrees, right? It would be flipped around that way. Then we have this and this, which if you flip it around 180 degrees is the same shape, right? Same as these. Flip it around 180 degrees, it is the same thing. So if you look at it, this is, I'm dating myself here by saying this word because vocabulary is not a thing with today's generation, but it's basically a palindrome, and we shifted it, right? So it's an inverted palindrome, which makes it, by today's standards, sound like I'm saying something really smart, but for anybody born before the 1980s, that's just English, right? So, like, don't even get me started on education today. Anyway, we have our pictures here, and if we memorize them in 3-2 a piece, we have our new method of looking at it, the Tetris method. Okay, so if we combine this with the Adamski method and with the Cops Always Get Free Donuts method, this gives us 3 different ways to view a picture. So going to where we have it on our fretboard, okay, so if I look at my C picture, we'll take it at the A shape just because we don't have to play with the open notes for this, right? So I can look at it this way. I can say that wherever there's this shape, I have a root here and a root here, and I could say, okay, because this is the root, that's 7, that's 6, right? So 1, 7, 6. Underneath 6 is 2, right? That's the Adamski method. And so I could just say this is 6, picture 6, right? Over picture 5. And I could get that. Or I could look at this as heartbeat alive, crooked shape, straight line, and see that, right? Or I can just look at it as the A shape, and the A shape has that scale, right? And so I have 3 methods to look at this, and I can't go wrong if I'm playing this here and it's like a okay, so I've got this going, my picture. Okay, look at the Adamski method. Picture 6, picture 5. Right, that's one way. Or I could think of this as, you know, that, and that, right? So wherever I see this, right? And that all works. All of these things work. Every one of these methods works, and tying them together gives us different ways to look at the same thing, right? It's like if you go to Mount Rushmore and you're looking at it from the lookout view, yeah, you can see that view right there, right? But you're not seeing everything. If you go on that hike all the way in the back, which I don't recommend because it's hot as well, if you go in the summer, it's hot as hell. But like, and it's kind of a treacherous walk if your wife has bad ankles. But if you go back that way, you take the trail, you get a different view because you're underneath it, right? And from what I've heard, I've never been on it, but like there's a back trail that you can go over the top of it too, and that gives you a completely different view. So if we're all looking at this big piece of art in the mountain, right? We see different things from different perspectives. None of us are wrong, but we're just seeing different sides of it. So when we're looking at this, the same thing applies. We're looking at a major scale, period, on the ukulele. A major scale on the ukulele. And this is one view, The Adamski method is another view. The cops always get free donuts is another view. But it brings us back to the same thing, and it ties it together. Which one is the best? I think they all are. You know, I think they work in conjunction, and I think they tie together, because the important thing isn't so much, and this is kind of saying a lot, the important thing isn't so much learning all of this, but biting onto something that I can tie to make sense to what I'm trying to do on the ukulele itself, right? So if we go back to our first thing, right, we said this was our shape. And it's comprised of, if we look at the numbers, 1, 3, 5, and 1, right? If I wanted to make that a minor, I would flat the 3. So now I have this minor shape, right? If I wanted to make it a diminished, I would flat the 3 and the 5. Right? If I wanted to make it an augmented, I'd raise the 5. Right, and there's my triads. If I wanted to make it a major 7, I would take out one of my roots and add a flat 7. Major 6. Drop that down. Dominant 7. Take your 7 and flat that. Right, we have all these different ways of showing that chord. Now here's the thing. How do you know if a chord's in the key? Well, see those numbers on the back end? If it ain't in there, then you're in a different key. All right, if one of your pictures, if your shape of your chord doesn't fit in there, then it's part of a different key. Simple as that, right? And I can look at it from my numbers, or I can look at it from my Tetris shapes, or I can look at it as my chord shapes, and the cops always get free donuts thing. Or I could look at it from the Adamski method and think of the numerology of the 3 notes per string thing, right? And all of this stuff will give me a different method. Now the important thing to do is to be able to practice this, okay? So we have a myriad of different ways. When we started off first, we did cops always get free donuts. We had to practice for that, right? Remember this? Right, we went up the neck. Cops always get free donuts. Then the Adamski method, right? We learned the pictures. So this is picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And then we go down. So 1, 7, 2, 1, 3. Can't get my fingers to work. There we go. 2. Right, 4, 3, and so forth, all the way up the neck. And we had that practice. So how do we practice this Tetris method? Well, we memorize the order, right? And so we got a straight line. We've got our heartbeat alive, crooked, straight line, crooked, heartbeat dead, and straight line. Now, the first straight line marks our C shape, right? Our A shape is started with the heartbeat shape, right? Our G shape is started with the crooked shape. And the G shape has 4, right? So crooked, straight, crooked. The F shape starts with the second straight. So it'd be straight, crooked, dead heartbeat. And the D shape is your crooked, dead heartbeat, and straight. And then we're back to the C shape. So wherever your root falls, that's where you tie in your pictures, right? Like, so for example, if I'm playing, say I'm playing in the key of F, right? So this is my picture. We said this starts off of the straight line, right? Going to the crooked, going through the dead heartbeat, right? So what would that look like in a picture? Well, That's those notes put in those order. And I could see it as straight line, crooked, dead heartbeat. Same note, that's why I didn't play it here, right? Played it down there. So if we can understand that and we can see those pictures, then I'm playing this, that, and that. So if I play in order, which is the same as that, right? Because that's okay, and that's how we practice it. We put it into practice, but it's got to be tied to that chord, because otherwise it's just a bunch of shapes, right? Now, what we're going to be getting into next week is how to play the entire chord scale through this. I won't say the best way, but I will say the easiest way that I found to look at this is through the Adamski method. However, all of these pictures are pertinent information if we know the number of the shape, right? So if I'm going here and I'm again at F, in the key of F, number 1 is F, right? So if I'm here, and that's my 1 picture, 2 is a minor, right? 3 is a minor, 4 is a major, 5 is a major, 6 is a minor, right? And then 7 diminished back to 1, right? And then my scale picture would be here, or play in the open if you want. Right, so when I play, I'm playing all the notes of that picture. And all I played there was the 1 chord, the 7 chord, and the 1 chord. Or you could think of it as 1 chord, 5 dominant, and 1, right? It sounds like Hawaiian slack key because it's all I'm playing is those notes from that chord, and that's all they do in the slack key method, right? Is to play those pictures. Same thing if we were to approach it from a different perspective, right? If we look at this as a major 7 chord, right? And then my 2 chord is my G minor 7, 5 chord is C7, and then 1 chord. Right, so right? So how would I approach that? Well, I've got my 2 chord, my 5 chord, and my 1 chord. Right? So I could play the pictures of this. That's 1, 2, right? 2, 5 subs for 7, 1, right? And we're back to our picture. And so I could use it in that way. That's kind of more pushing the Adamski method, though, because I'm looking at the number of it, right, as opposed to the chord picture. So again, a myriad of different approaches to the chord picture. Now, when you first start off playing the ukulele, you don't know any of the chord structures or what chord leads to what. This is a new thing, right? It's like learning a new language, and you know a few words, but you don't know any of the sentences yet. So what do? We get a book, right? How many of you guys have the what is that thing called? Like the 300, 1 year of ukulele or something? The 365 ukulele songs, right? You seen that book before, or is the other one I see? the big book of ukulele, they call it, where it has all these songs like, the Build Me Up Buttercup and Sloop John B and all these all these tunes in it, right? And so you got all these songs, and you buy this book, and there's maybe like 5-10 songs that you actually want to play in that book, right? The book's like that thick. So what do? We go online and we type in the song we want and the word chords, right? And then the chords pop up and we look at it. The problem with the internet is that everybody's got an opinion, and they're like buttholes, right? Everybody's got one, they all stink. So we get on there, people put their own chords on there, and a lot of times they're not the same chords that the song is played on, right? But here's the thing. If you find a song that you really like, you get on there, you start playing the chords to it, and you can hear that that's not the right chord, that's a victory. Because your ear is telling you, like, hey, this is wrong, this is not the right chord, right? So what do? You notice it's not far off, but it's definitely not that chord. So you look back on here. Say, well, I've got a D minor. That's what the book says. So I'm going to look at this D minor. But that doesn't sound like that, right? So how can I change this D minor? The next note in the scale is that. Oh, so it could be an F, right? Maybe it's a D minor 7. It's almost it, but that's not quite it. Hey, there's that chord. It's a D minor 6, right? And so you kind of find that by listening and knowing where the numbers lie, right? So you can go look online, find a song. If it sounds like the right song, then leave it alone. Okay, if there's something that sounds wrong about it, then start discovering and use this method to find the right chord. Okay? The other thing we're going to find too is that sometimes there's a song and the chord that's in the song isn't part of our chord scale. Right? You ever see this thing where you're going through C? Well, what happened there? Right? We have C going into E7. In our key of C, E is a minor, right? So we got, then we go to A minor, then we go to D7. In the key of C, D is a minor, right? Then we go to G7, oh, there, that's familiar, and C. So we have two chords that don't fit our description. They have the correct root, but for some reason, they're dominant chords, right? Well, this is going to come into play as we go further along and we kind of get into music theory a little bit. I don't want to go too far with my fretboard approach into music theory, but understanding secondary dominance is a big part of music. It's a big part of this kind of thing. Why that is important, right? Because in the key of C, we have a note, right? Secondary dominant would be E7. Brings us to A minor. D7 is 5 of G, right? Right, which gives us G7, which is 5 of C. So if you don't understand that, don't worry, because we're going to learn that down the ways. But knowing that that note came from our key, just not directly, and then you see what note it was, right? E7 has a note that lies between our 5 and our 6, right? It's a sharp 5. It's an augmented chord, right? It sharps that 5. But we know it's not augmented because we said it's a E7, it's a dominant. But what's it doing? It's taking our G7, dropping that back a whole step, and adding this up a half step. Right? So the only note that's not in our key, that one. So when that chord comes, guess which note I'm playing? That one, right? Because then it addresses that key change. And the rest of the time, because we haven't completely changed keys, guess what I'm playing? Tetris. All those notes are there. Okay, so now to homework. As we practice this, what we want to do is we want to break down 4 different things, okay? The first thing we want to do is make sure that we know our chord picture for wherever we are, because we don't want to get lost. We have to tie to something. And the chord picture, we're going to tie to the root, right? That gives us a 1. Chord picture gives us the cops always get free donuts thing, and we can work that whole thing across the neck. If we know our cops always get free donuts, we know where 1 is everywhere. From there, we can use the Adamski method, right? The 1 tells us where 1 is. What's under 1? 4, right? And so we can play picture 1, picture 7, work our way down, get all of our scales in line with the 3 notes per string thing. The next thing we can do is, if we know where 1 is, right, and we know where all the ones are here, right, Tetris, right? So I've got this one, that's that shape. That shape is, right, this shape, right, this shape, if I can get my fingers to do it, right, and then this shape is, and then we're back to the C shape, right? So we got our 5 shapes, and so we can see all the pictures of that, and that's how we're going to practice it, right? And then the 4th thing that we need to know is, in tying everything together, is that we have to be able to correlate where the 1 is to the shape of the number, or to the shape of the root of whatever major chord we're playing on, right? And we have to be able to tie it to the number. If it's a 1, if it's a 4, if it's 5, if it's major, 2, 3, 6 if it's minor, right? And 7 if it's diminished. If we can tie those things together, right, then we know all the chords in the key, and we know all of the chords that work with that particular song, and which ones to substitute, right? All right, now going into the songs that don't have chords that are part of the key. We're going to be touching on that next week, because we're going to be looking at the things that in music theory we call these notes accidentals. You ever see a sheet music thing, right? And then you've got like a sharp next to it, but that sharp was not there at the beginning, right? It wasn't in the key signature. So we call those notes accidentals. When they're thrown into chords, that chord is derived from somewhere, and we're going to be learning to trace those down. And once you get to that picture, we can either do the thing I said earlier where we play that note, or we can play that key too, right? So whatever key that changed to for that momentary movement, we can actually change key for that second and then move back. And that brings on a whole myriad of different practicing methods that you have to go for that, right? But you're equipped, because you know the Adamski method, you know where a 4th away is, you know where a 5th away is, you know where a 6th away is, and you can see your picture at that point. Now, that being said, we're going to close out today with that, and next week, hopefully you've taken your notes today, because I'm going to assume when we start next week that you know this stuff, and then we're going to move on from there. And it gets a little bit hairy for the next 2 weeks, and then by the following week after that, by the 8th week, we should be smooth sailing. I think this is going to be about 8 or 9. I'm hoping it doesn't go to 10 videos, but if it gets to, it might. I'm going to try to end it at 8, but if not, we'll make it to 9. Okay, but it's smooth sailing after you get through the next 2 weeks. All right, guys, hopefully this has been fun, And I will see you. Take care. Aloha.